That all happened when I was just a kid, probably in second or third grade. It's been so long, my memory's a little fuzzy, but that night sticks out for good reason, and you'll see why. It was a school day, and it had been pouring rain nonstop all day. After my parents picked me up, they left the house to attend some fancy event. I don't even remember if it was a fundraiser or a dinner party or something similar. Anyway, they were supposed to be back that night. But while they were gone, the storm really went wild, and it became dangerous to drive any distance. Instead of taking the risk to come back, they decided reluctantly to stay overnight at a friend's place nearby, since that friend lived much closer to the event. I remember them calling me from the house phone, apologizing over and over for leaving me home alone, even though I kept telling them I wasn't even hungry and I'd be fine. My mom gave me a quick list of things to do before bed: lock all the doors and windows, keep at least one light on in the house, make sure all the blinds were closed, the usual stuff. Back then, I didn't get why they were making such a big deal out of it. I wasn't old enough to understand how risky it was to leave someone my age alone, but honestly, I was kinda excited to have the place to myself. It meant unlimited candy, no bedtime, and just chilling on my own. I didn't have a TV or any screens in my room, so I stayed downstairs in the living room on the couch, watching whatever was on. I told myself I'd complete everything on my mom's list before heading to bed, since I figured I'd stay up all night anyway. But at some point, after eating too much candy and crashing from a sugar high, I fell asleep. Not surprising. I don't remember exactly what time I woke up, but it was late enough that the TV had turned off into sleep mode for at least 3 hours. What really stood out was how much colder I felt when I woke up. It wasn't unusual for temperatures to drop at night, but this was a pretty big difference, and I immediately knew something was off. Even back then, I thought about curling back under the covers and going back to sleep, but then I recalled the list my mom had given me. I knew she'd find out if I didn't follow through, and I really didn't want to get in trouble, especially since she trusted me to stay alone. So, I forced myself to get off the couch and went to check the windows and doors. I did exactly what she told me: locked the front and back doors, closed all the blinds, checked every window, and made sure the lights were off. Everything was sealed tight, which confused me a little because the house still felt way colder than it should have. I even pressed my hand against some of the windows to see if they were cracked open or anything, but they were all intact. I figured maybe the storm knocked out the heater or something, and honestly, I was too tired to think about it much, so I brushed it off and headed upstairs to my room, ready to crash again. That was when I realized just how intense the storm had become. Our living room is in the middle of the house, so I hadn't really noticed from downstairs how brutal it was. But my bedroom has a big window on the outside wall, so I could hear everything: the rain pounding against the glass as if trying to get in, and every so often a burst of lightning followed immediately by a loud thunderclap. I wasn't afraid of storms at that age, but I remember feeling worried that a tree might fall onto the house. That's probably why I had trouble falling asleep, even though I was exhausted just minutes before. Then, as I lay there trying to drift off, I started noticing strange sounds: these weird creaking noises, like shifting wood. But the whole floor was carpeted, so it couldn't have been coming from downstairs. At first, I thought it was just the wind making the trees sway, but the sounds didn't match what you'd expect from a storm. After a while, it started bothering me: not the storm, but that stupid creaking noise. I couldn't take it anymore, so I sat up, listening closely, trying to ignore the storm's roar. I looked around the room, not sure what I was expecting to see, and focused on the sound. The lightning lit up the room briefly. Everything looked normal, but my eyes kept drifting toward the closet. That was the only piece of furniture made of wood in there. Then the room went dark again and I froze. When lightning flashed once more, I saw it: something that made my stomach turn. The closet door, which I was 100% sure had been shut earlier, was slightly ajar. Something had pushed it open. I didn't scream or cry out. I didn't even think. I just quietly got out of bed and tiptoed out of the room, trying not to make a sound. It felt like I was walking through a mile-long journey just to get to the stairs, but I did it. I ran downstairs and hid under the dining room table, trembling and crying. I didn't know what else to do. There was someone in my house, and my parents were way too far away to help. I don't know how long I stayed under that table, but eventually I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, something heavy, bouncing or jumping, not walking normally. I held my breath, realizing that any sound I made could be my last. These footsteps didn't sound like normal, more like someone crashing or bouncing all over the place. They grew closer, entering the dining room area, smack dab where I was hiding. I was terrified. I honestly thought I was going to die. Then from underneath the table I saw them. I couldn't see their upper body, but two bare, muddy, yellow-tinted legs stepped into view. They looked gross, like they'd rolled around in thorns, cuts all over them, stumbling as if they couldn't even stand upright. And just as I thought it couldn't get worse, I heard something drop. Clink. It was a wrench hitting the floor. I swear it took everything I had not to scream. If that person bent down to pick up the wrench, they'd have seen me with my eyes wide open. I watched as they stood still, not touching the wrench but not walking away either. It was like some kind of standoff, where any wrong move could be deadly. Finally, they kept walking and I didn't see them anymore. I listened as their chaotic footsteps pounded around the first floor, stomping, stumbling forever, it felt like. Then, the front door opened and shut. The person was gone. I stayed under that table for a long time after, trembling and overwhelmed. I was genuinely scared, shaken to my core. Part of me knew how dangerous the situation was, but I was just a kid and didn't know how to handle it. The rest of the night is a blur. I grabbed the wrench from the floor, hiding it so my parents wouldn't find it, and once the front door was locked, I slowly crept back upstairs, crawled into bed, and eventually fell asleep. Everything seemed normal after that, but I was terrified to tell my parents what had happened. I didn't want them to know I hadn't locked the doors or followed their instructions, so I kept quiet about the whole thing for years. When I finally told them much later, they hardly believed. Mate took a lot of convincing. Looking back, not telling them right away was a bad mistake. There was nothing they could have done about it at that moment, so waiting only made more sense in hindsight. That experience haunted me through most of my childhood. I started sleeping with a nightlight after that, and I developed a deep fear of the dark that lingered for years. I still find it hard to explain exactly what happened that night, but it taught me to lock up tight night and day. I grew up an only child, living with my parents in a pretty big house. It was a little too big for just us, but my parents joked that they'd never planned to have only one kid. They just never got around to having more. I was 15 when the next incident happened, on a rainy Saturday night in May. Can't remember the exact date, just that it was one of the last weekends before summer break. I should mention I have some pretty weird health issues: panic attacks, fainting spells, trouble breathing sometimes. I also need absolute silence to fall asleep. Even a tiny fan keeps me awake. I've learned to push through most of it, but sleepovers or trips are still tough because I can't handle noise. People always say they love listening to rain when they sleep, but for me, it's the opposite. Heavy rain is like my personal insomnia trigger. One night a few months back, it poured heavily but didn't quite storm. The rain kept me awake all night, no matter what I did. I realized I wasn't sleeping anytime soon, so I decided to get up and do something instead, maybe take a walk in the rain. It wasn't the first time I'd done that. My parents actually encouraged me to walk around when I couldn't sleep. We live in a quiet neighborhood, right next to a big park that's well lit and safe, so it wasn't dangerous. Plus, I thought it was peaceful to be outside, listening to the trees sway and raindrops fall. I threw on my rain jacket, headed downstairs quietly, and stepped outside without an umbrella. I didn't bother bringing my phone either. I knew the glow of my screen would wake me up even more. It was strangely calming out there, just me, the sound of the rain, the trees bobbing in the wind. I wandered along the trail for about 20 minutes, and I started feeling sleepy, so I turned around, planning to get back to bed. As I crossed the park, I looked toward the road and saw something strange. There was a long, black object lying flat in the middle of the street. At first, I thought it might be a trash bag or some debris, but as I stared, I realized it was a person face down on the pavement, just laying there. It made my stomach churn. My only thought was that they'd been hit by a car, badly hurt, or maybe worse. No natural reason someone would just be lying there perfectly still in the rain like that. My gut told me to keep my head down and walk on, but I couldn't ignore it. I was raised to help if someone was in trouble, so against my instinct, I started walking toward the figure. When I got closer, I could see they were wearing black pants and a dark plaid shirt, definitely not clothes you'd wear in heavy rain, which made me think it was a man. The cold hit me hard, then like the rain was both lukewarm and freezing at the same time, random and weird. As I neared, a sudden screech broke out behind me, jolting my nervous, kind of like a howl but off, like an animal in pain. I whipped around, heart pounding, but saw nothing. The noise seemed to come from deeper in the park. Still, it was so strange, so unsettling, that it made my blood run cold. Then I turned back toward the street, and the person was no longer lying down. They were sitting upright, staring right at me. My vision started narrowing, everything fading away. All I could hear was the relentless drumming of rain until the worst part happened. The person stood up sharply, sprinting toward me with a demonic grin, holding what looked like a kitchen knife. In that moment, I knew what real fear felt like, never experienced anything like it. I snapped out of my shock and bolted in the opposite direction as fast as I could. I heard him scream, "I'll kill you," at the top of his lungs. The wet grass slowed me down, but I figured anyone chasing me would have trouble too. I didn't want to run straight home. Instead, I darted toward the thickest part of the park, the area where I just heard the screech. I ran through the trees, trying to lose him in the darkness, not looking back once. The adrenaline made me go faster, and honestly, considering how crazy he looked, I think I was risking my life just by keeping up that pace. I shoved into the woods, trying to find a hiding spot, lungs burning, but I didn't care. I knew if I stopped, I might pass out from the fear. I finally found cover behind a tree, crouched down, and tried to breathe. I peeked out. No one was in sight, at least that I could see. All I could think about was getting home safely. I stayed there for a while, maybe about 20 minutes, before cautiously sneaking out the back of the woods, taking a long, weird route around the neighborhood. No one followed me. When I finally got home, I collapsed on my bed, soaked, exhausted, and scarred in a way I've never quite shaken off. I still don't have a clear explanation for what I saw or experienced that night. That scream, the howling noise, still haunts me. I don't really believe it was connected directly to the guy chasing me, but the timing's too coincidental. I think he saw me, heard that screech, then did whatever he did. His motives? No idea. Maybe he was high or something worse. I know that's not a real explanation, but it's the best I got. I still live in that same house now, and even after all these years, I can't help but think about that night sometimes. The most unsettling part: that comment he made about his friend Ivan, how he took care of him. I don't want to imagine what that really means. I'd rather not dwell on it, but honestly, there's not many other explanations for what I saw. I'm just thankful I was armed that night. If I hadn't been, I might not be here to tell this story.